Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining the Healey Community Q&A webinar this week. I'm going to pause and just give a few moments here. I can see people trickling in from the waiting room, so I want to make sure we've got everybody on board before we actually start the presentation. I'm Catherine Small. I'm the patient navigator for the Healey ALS Platform Trial, tuning in from Boston, Massachusetts. It's been a blistering 100-degree week, and we finally have a cloudy day, so if anybody's been in that same boat, congratulations on some very livable weather. And with that, I think our numbers in the waiting room are starting to stabilize, so I'll move on to the next slide. So hopefully those of you in the audience are here because you wanted to attend a webinar about the Healey ALS Platform Trial. If not, now's your time to get out of Dodge, or we have a special guest this week, so you can stay tuned for that surprise guest in a couple of slides here. But I wanted to just provide a quick overview if anyone's new who hasn't joined before. These webinars just help keep the community up to date about platform trial ongoings and news. And so on the fourth Thursday of the month, we typically provide an update about the platform trial. The second Thursday of the month, we typically do expanded access as the topic of discussion. So with that, we can move to the first slide to make sure we're on the same page about the platform trial. So I'm jumping the gun a little bit by saying this. The platform trial started in July of 2020, so we're moments away from acknowledging the 5-year anniversary of launching this trial. And I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has ever reached out to express interest in this trial. There have been thousands of people who have reached out with interest in learning about this trial and how to participate. Thank you to the people who enrolled and did participate in any of the 7 regimens so far. Thank you to all the family members, caregivers, friends who helped make that possible for people to show up for their study visits and contribute to science in this way. And big shout out to all of the many people in the village on staff for the platform trial, whether you are on the project management side, data management side, if you're a research coordinator, nurse, or physician who's working on this trial, thank you for showing up every day and trying to pull some punches in the fight against ALS and move that needle forward. So with that, we are announcing that we have published a paper about the first 4 regimens. So for regimens A, B, C, and D, there was a recent publication last month that it's open access, so anyone can use that QR code or go to the link online to read the full publication. It's an operational manuscript about the launch of the first 4 regimens and learnings from those regimens. We can head to the next slide. So the platform trial, we always talk about it being this perpetual adaptive trial. And when I say perpetual, it can be misleading. So sometimes it sounds like, oh, it's perpetual, meaning it's open to enrollment all the time. What I mean is it's perpetual as in it's a constantly moving machine. So right now enrollment is not open, but the machine is still churning and we're still analyzing data, collecting data, managing ongoing regimens. The 2 most recent ones are regimen F and G. And we're in the works preparing for future regimens later in 2025. And based on the learnings from previous regimens, we're adapting. So based on what we've learned through regimens A through E and meetings with our patient advisory committee, if you go to the QR code linked here, you can see exactly what those changes to the master protocol are. And when I say master protocol, I mean the protocol that every regimen would adhere to. So this applies for the future regimens that will be coming down the pipeline in terms of what the criteria for participation will be, but also in terms of increased flexibility for study visits and remote visit opportunities as well. So if you're interested in that, you can read more in that press release. There's a link to the PDF file. You can head to the next slide. Another innovative feature that rolled out fairly recently is what is called the Acceleration Centers of Enrollment Initiative, or ACE initiative. And this is a teaser trailer for why we have our special guest with us this week. So there are various supporters for this initiative. So support comes from an anonymous donor, ALS One, the Les Turner ALS Foundation, and Never Surrender. And essentially, this initiative helps support research operations at 3 of the sites listed on the slide here. So funding from these donors enables these sites, whatever resources need, whether it's hiring more staff, the training infrastructure, the trial infrastructure, helping to make enrollment more efficient at those sites so we can bring in more people when research is available, And that's basically what this initiative is. So we're really grateful for those sites who have partnered in this initiative and for the organizations who helped make that possible. And with that, so I highlighted the Les Turner Foundation there. We can head to the next slide and I'll introduce our guest this week. So Anne-Marie Doyle, I will hand the mic over to you to let you introduce yourself and present some slides.
Catherine, thank you so much for the invitation today. And I'm so glad that we were able to connect and collaborate today. As Catherine had mentioned, my name is Anne Marie. I am Director of Community Education at the Les Turner ALS Foundation. I've been with the foundation for just about 3 years. And prior to that, I was a speech language pathologist who worked with people, mainly adults, um, who had neurological diagnoses, so stroke, Parkinson's, dementia, and ALS at a really big rehab hospital here in Chicago. Next slide, please. So to give you a little bit more information on the Les Turner ALS Foundation, we are one of the longest serving independent ALS groups in the country. Les Turner was a man who was diagnosed with ALS, and this foundation began almost 50 years ago in his living room by him and his friends and family. And flash forward to today, we really find ourselves or consider ourselves experts in providing comprehensive and personalized care for people living with ALS, their family, and their care partners. Next slide. So one thing that makes us really special is we have a really remarkable team of support services coordinators. Um, and for anybody who attends the Lois and Solia ALS Clinic at the Les Turner ALS Center at Northwestern Medicine in Chicago, you'll be paired with a support service coordinator who can help answer questions about ALS, provide emotional support, and then provide navigation for things like recommendations for home safety, equipment, caregiver resources, guidance on insurance, and also provide information about clinical research and clinical trials. This team is also really helpful. They're a great conduit between the clinic staff. So, at times it might be hard to navigate something like my chart, or you may have a question and your neurologist or pulmonologist or occupational therapist is treating patients all day, so they're not able to get back to you super quickly, but you likely can get in contact with your support service coordinator a lot easier. So they can kind of pass those questions along. And then we do have an equipment loan closet, and we can provide need-based grants to folks. Next slide. And one thing that's really great is we have support groups. These are free virtual support groups, and these are open to anybody in the country. So you don't just have to attend a clinic at Northwestern. This is just for anybody who has ALS, has lost a loved one to ALS, is a caregiver for a person living with ALS. These are just a safe space to navigate the challenges associated with ALS. They're led by our support services coordinators. So we have a team of social workers, nurses, and psychologists who help provide and facilitate these support groups. And as previously mentioned, we have support groups for people living with ALS. We have a caregivers only support group. So if you are on this call and you are a caregiver for someone living with ALS and are just looking for a safe space to kind of talk through and meet other people who are in similar situations as you, that that can be a really fantastic option. We also opened up some newer support groups for bereavement, as well as those that have been newly diagnosed to ALS and young adults who have been impacted by ALS. If you scan that QR code, that'll take you straight to our support group landing page where you can learn more and even sign up. Next slide. Okay, so then another big aspect of the Les Turner ALS Foundation is our educational program. One aspect of our educational program is our online education tools. So, My ALS Decision Tool is an online interactive tool that allows you to learn more about some potential ALS treatment options. It walks you through the benefits and maybe some of the considerations that you should think about prior to making that decision. And then towards the end of the tool, it provides you kind of the space to reflect on what matters most to you and kind of help you make that decision. And ideally, what we hope is that this can help narrow down some of those more challenging conversations that you may have in your clinic appointments. We know clinic appointments are awesome because it's one-stop shopping. You get to see all these experts in one day, but we also know that it can be extremely overwhelming. And based on the time and availability, you may not see everyone that you wanted to see or ask questions. How many times, I know it's happened to me, I get in the car after a doctor's appointment and I'm like, oh, darn it, I totally forgot to ask that one question. So this is a way for you to kind of move at your own pace, learn about a topic, and then hopefully have a really productive conversation at your next visit. We currently have 5 modules on our website. One is on non-invasive ventilation. One is on G-tube support, genetic testing for somebody who's been diagnosed with ALS, genetic counseling and testing for somebody who may have a family history of ALS or other related conditions, and then one that outlines participation in ALS clinical research. And thank you, Catherine, for dropping that link in the chat. And again, you can scan that QR code. It'll take you directly to our landing page. Next slide. Okay, kind of the next phase of our education program is just if you're interested in learning more about ALS symptoms and potential care options, we have some information guides for you. And these cover topics like nutrition, breathing, home modifications, but we also have ones on topics surrounding genetic testing and participation in clinical research. All of our guides are free on our website. You can download them. You can send links to folks who maybe you have family members that live out of state or they want to learn more about ALS. You can pass those links along to them. And then you'll also find that all of our guides are available in Spanish. So at the top of the page, you can just click the En Español button and it'll take you to a direct translation to the guide, which is really nice. Next slide. So to talk a little bit more about some of our newer information guides, these QR codes will take you to our newest guide. This launched in the fall of last year. It is on ALS and participation in clinical research, and it was developed in part in partnership with the team at Niels. And what's really great about this guide is it really walks you through all the different types of research that is available. So maybe you're a little hesitant to join a clinical trial, but you might be more interested in participating in an observational study. That information kind of breaks down the differences between the two, the different phases of the clinical trial, and why they're all really important. It also outlines your role as a research participant and your rights as a research participant. It should always be noted that research is completely voluntary. So at any point, you can step away. There's no consequences to that. So we thought that was really important to understand. And then it also provides firsthand experience. So we have quotes and information from people who have in the past completed clinical research or have been a caregiver to somebody who participated in clinical research. So you get kind of that first person perspective of why they chose to pursue research or not. And again, that is available in both English and Spanish. Next slide. And then two of our other guides, which were launched about a year ago, spring, summer of last year, are our genetic resource guides. So we have a guide that is in accordance with the recent publication of the evidence-based consensus guidelines on genetic counseling and testing for people living with ALS. We know that regardless of your presentation or your family history, people diagnosed with ALS have the option to pursue genetic counseling and genetic testing. So we have a guide that just kind of breaks down that process. If you have a family connection to ALS or other related conditions, you too can pursue genetic counseling and genetic testing. And we have a guide that kind of walks you through that process as well. So feel free to scan those guides and look that information up. Next slide, please. And then kind of the last here in our education program is our ALS Learning Series. So we host a monthly free webinar for people living with ALS, their family and care partners. Our next learning series is going to be in July, and that's going to be with Lane Riles, a speech pathologist from Bridging Voice, who's going to be talking about all the newest updates in voice preservation. The QR code and the link that Catherine just posted in the chat will take you to our landing page, our learning series landing page. You should find the registration for July in the coming days. I think right now we have our June learning series link, which is for this right now, the Healey Platform office hours. So stay tuned. That should be updated within the next day or two. But you'll also find a library. We record all of our learning series. So you can search by category. We've had talks recently on the environmental factors associated with ALS. Dr. Berry talked about observational studies. But we've also covered topics like complementary and alternative treatments associated with ALS, communication and technology like home adaptions. From the team at Team Gleason gave a talk a couple of years ago. So you'll find a plethora of information on that website. Next slide. And then last but not least, thank you so much for the little segue or intro into the Innate ACE initiative, Catherine. At the Lois and Solia ALS Clinic at the Les Turner ALS Center at Northwestern Medicine, we host a lot of different clinical research opportunities. Again, if you scan that QR code, that'll take you to our clinical research landing page where you can search or you can kind of scroll through the trials that are actively recruiting at Northwestern. We have some biomarker studies, open label therapeutics studies, natural history studies, and clinical trials historically. So if you just visit that website, we keep it pretty updated. So you'll be able to see what's been closed for right now and then what's actively recruiting. Next slide. And then I briefly mentioned a lot of our guides have been translated into Spanish, but we also have a Spanish-based website. It can be found at es.lesturnерals.org, and some of the landing pages that you might find helpful are we have our What is ALS um, tab, support for people living with ALS, clinical research information, and then again, some of those educational programs that have been translated into Spanish. Next slide. Okay, and that's all that I wrote, literally. Thank you to the people living with ALS and their families, because all of our educational materials are co-produced with people living with ALS. So we greatly, greatly appreciate all of your help and guidance.
Thank you, Anne Marie. And I think there's
Yeah.
one more slide before we'll wrap up
Oh,
the presentation portion. You were right, it was all you wrote. So the last thing I wanted to chime in here before we open up for Q&A, I'll just note if anyone has any questions that you'd like answered during the webinar tonight, please type them in the Q&A and we will get to those momentarily here once we stop sharing the slides. But I did want to note that in terms of the Healey ALS Platform Trial, anyone is welcome to send me questions outside of these webinars, or if you wanted to talk about that trial more, my email's on the screen there. I'll put it in the chat as well. I'll also note you can sign up for the ALS link, which is an email broadcast system powered through the Healey and AMG Center at Mass General Hospital. And basically, it's how we send notifications about webinar opportunities like these ones, as well as just general news about ALS research, different trials that are recruiting, if there's results that come out, press releases that the community might want to know about, we'll send those out through the ALS link. You can register for these webinars well in advance. We have them, set up through the end of 2025. So the upcoming schedule for July 10th, we'll do an expanded access discussion with the famous Dr. Rick Bedlack from Duke University. And on the 24th, I'll be joined by research access nurse Judy Carey, who's here at the Healey Center at Mass General as well. And we'll be focusing that conversation about research access. So those are the two upcoming for July, but we've got more guest speakers and good topics coming up later this summer as well. So you can register in advance. And with that, I'll stop screen sharing the slides, or I'll have Mimi stop screen sharing. And I did want to just take a moment to thank you, Henry, for highlighting the Spanish resources. I know it's not always the easiest to find Spanish language resources for ALS in general and about, clinical trials specifically. So I'm very grateful. I learned about a couple new resources today, so I'm so glad that you were here to present that information. And I definitely, I share lots of links when people have questions because I use your website a lot as well. But with that, I think we do have a question that came in the chat. So somebody's asking, can you elaborate on open label studies? Which drugs are you offering? And I think perhaps, so open label is synonymous with what's called an active treatment extension in research. So, in the context of the platform trial, when a regimen um, for the placebo-controlled portion, when that ends, there's the active treatment extension or open label. And so that's part of the trial itself, and that pertains to people who are participants in the trial. If you were asking about expanded access, that is something that's separate from research, but kind of parallel to it. So expanded access is an avenue for people who don't qualify to participate in research or are not able to. It's a pathway for them to access experimental therapies that are not yet FDA approved. So it's therapies that are still under investigation. And so I can put a link in the chat here. We have a website on the Mass General web pages that goes into details about different expanded access opportunities. And again, next month, so July 10th, Dr. Rick Bedlack will be talking about expanded access, what that is, and different opportunities. So right now, my understanding is that the ones that I know of that are open are the RAPA 501 EAP. There's an Abudilast EAP that was started out of the Mayo Clinic in Florida. We'll have Dr. Bjorn Oscarson come talk about that on August 14th. So if you want to know about that EAP, stay tuned for August. Um, And I think those two are the main ones on my radar, if that question was about expanded access. And there is a question in the chat also about when will enrollment for the new regimen in the Healey Platform Trial begin? I am right there with you in that same boat asking the same questions. So we are in talks with different drug companies. So the way that the pipeline for the platform trial works is that any drug company can approach with an application to be included in the trial. Then there's a expert review committee, the therapy evaluation committee that reviews the preclinical science, the early clinical evidence, to see if it might be a good fit for the trial. If that is a go, then the people who are not me, people with a much higher security clearance for the platform trial, will work with the drug company to develop and design a regimen and a specific protocol for that regimen. And so right now, the most recent announcement, I'll try to, it's hard to talk and put links in the chat, so I'll try to inundate the chat with some links later. But the most recent announcement that went out was regarding the startup of the design phase for a regimen with the drug company Transposon Therapeutics. And so I'll put the link to that press release, and I'll just note I don't know the specific timelines to expect, but I do know that the press release, is announcing that it's in design. So I don't have specifics on startup, but we are in conversations with companies to design future regimens for 2025. I'll say sometime in 2025, and I'm not hiding that information. I just don't know exactly when, but we'll definitely keep the community updated through these webinars over the coming weeks and months. I don't see any other questions coming in, so while I snag a couple of links to put in the chat, Anne Marie, I'll let you wrap up with any final words or comments from your perspective.
Yeah, of course. So I dropped my email address in the chat below. So I know once you get off this call, you might think of something. Feel free to reach out to me. It's my first initial A and my last name Doyle. So A Doyle at lesturnerals.org. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And if I can't answer your question immediately, I will try and connect you to somebody who I know who can. So.
And the same goes for me. So I'll put my email in the chat. I will say that my level of expertise, if you want to call it expertise, is fairly strictly the Healey ALS Platform Trial. So if you have any questions about the platform trial, sometimes I have information on expanded access too, but if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat and you're welcome to reach out. If I don't have the answer, I'll try to hunt it down. I know some people who know some people here at the Healey Center, so I'll try to help in any way that I can. And with that, I'll thank you again. Anne Marie, thanks so much for being here, sharing information. Thank you for partnering in research and helping to develop all those great resources. And we're coming up on the half hour here, so I will set you free on this Thursday night. And we will post the recording for this online, so it'll be both on the Healey Center website and, like Anne Marie was saying, it will also be on the Les Turner website. So if you wanted the access the recording, it should be up online sometime next week. All right.
Thank you all so much for giving up your afternoon. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope everyone is staying cool. We got another heat wave, Catherine. So I hope, you'll get a little bit of cooler weather, but it's coming right back.
But yes, stay cool. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully the next time we meet again, the next webinar is July 10th. So we'll see you then if you're coming back for another round. But take care and thanks everyone. Good night.
Bye.